Namaste and welcome back to Mindful Serenity Yoga, or Waking Up in a Busy World. I'm not sure what site you're tapping into, but I'll have these videos posted probably on both at some point in time. I am once again going to continue with my little quest for better understanding and better assimilation of my learning by asking, or more likely answering, some profound questions that were posed to me or to others that I have collected in this handy dandy jar, and I will pull out a question and proceed to answer it within a 10-minute time frame. So I'm going to set my timer and I will begin, and you'll have to excuse the way I look. I just came back from a walk with the dogs, and I'm sure I now have one arm longer than the other because we ran into some snowmobilers along the trail. And it was very cold out there in my part of the world, so we walked a little faster than normal. So anyway, I am going to reach in and pull out a question. Hopefully it's not too challenging. Okay, the question is, why is boredom such an uncomfortable feeling? Why is boredom such an uncomfortable feeling? And I will take a deep breath before I begin. And the reason why I breathe before I begin answering a question is I want to center myself a little bit and ground myself, get away from the ego mind that wants to, go ahead and try to create some image of itself as being smart or knowing everything, when in reality I know so little. So when I take a deep breath, I bring myself back down to that deeper part that we all have within us, and I will allow that to do the answering, so it's not an egoic mission of mine to answer this question at all. Okay, so now I only have 8 minutes and 53 seconds to answer that very profound question. I even forget what the question was now. Why is boredom such an uncomfortable feeling? Wow. Panzais 139 by a man named Blaise Pascal, who in the 16th, I think it was the 16th century, was a brilliant mathematician, philosopher, and writer. Came up with a series of thoughts called pensées that he wrote. He was French, so the word pensée means thought or idea. And he wrote a number of these ideas down, and the pensée is 139, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it can be paraphrased as simply saying that the reason for man's unhappiness or suffering has to do with the fact that he is unable to sit in a room alone. He's unable to sit with this idea of boredom. I have young adults, mother of 4 young adults, and I knew from the ages of 14 onward that their major complaint to me was, "I'm so bored, I don't know what to do," and I still hear them saying that. And I still see that boredom to them is a great sense of suffering and discomfort. Boredom, I think, what it really entails is not doing, and we live in a society that is conditioned and programmed to do all the time. The reason why we do is we can avoid doing what Blaise Pascal said we couldn't do, sit in a room alone. We do not want to sit by ourselves. We do not want to sit with what's going on in our inner worlds. We want to constantly be diverted and distracted with busy doing or thinking activities, pleasant and favorable experiences and emotions. We don't want to settle with what the world is offering us right here and right now, because a lot of times we consider the moment we're in boring or uncomfortable in other ways. Boredom is an uncomfortable feeling because it is when we're bored that I believe we are tapping into the inner self that's wanting to come out and express itself. And we have stuffed and repressed, suppressed, denied, avoided, pushed down, hid away from this inner self as much as we could, because it contains a lot of those unpleasant things we do not want to experience. We have spent our lives trying to protect it from getting poked and, triggered by the outside world, always wanting to create a favorable experience and avoid anything that is unfavorable. So that's how we spent our lives, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of busyness to do that. So when we're not busy, when we're sitting by ourselves, having nothing to do, then we tap into this uncomfortable feeling, this unease, this need for expression of our inner worlds that we have so long denied. That's why boredom, I think, is uncomfortable for most of us. We don't want to sit in a room alone with these 60,000 thoughts a day that scientists propose that we have, 60,000 thoughts a day, 90% of them is said to be, repetitive, and 80% of them are said to be repetitive. The same cycle of thoughts going on in our head all the time. And those thoughts are derived from this repression and suppression of these emotions that we've been trying to keep down and trying to avoid getting triggered by the outside world. I hope I'm making sense. So boredom then is sitting with these thoughts and sitting with these feelings that we try to avoid, and sitting with this idea that doing's not going to save us. So many of us have this illusion that the more we do and the more we attain out there, and the more we grab that's pleasurable, then the less pain and suffering we'll experience. But that's not the case at all. And when we sit alone, we come to realize that no amount of external gratification is ever going to appease the ego for very long. It's always going to want more. And it's an internal restlessness, an internal unease that we're tapping into when we're bored. We're feeling those feelings that we have so long tried to repress and suppress, and are very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable for that inner world to come to the surface, especially when we spend so much of our energy and so much of our time keeping it down. Sitting in a room alone, however, is probably the solution for the unease we're feeling when we sit in a room alone. Getting bored is probably the solution for handling boredom. We need to be able to learn to sit with all experiences, emotional or otherwise, that we encounter. We need to be able to sit with what is. And when we can master boredom, when we can master that feeling of unease that comes up with boredom and allow it just to be what it is without resisting it or trying to push it down or away, just allow it to come up. Because all emotion is basically is energy, right? It's just a means of flowing through us. Its intention is for it to flow through us. Yet with our suppression and repression, we keep it blocked inside us, right? And so we have these accumulation of old emotions and old thoughts and old energies that want to come to the surface. So when we're bored, if we could just allow boredom, which is probably the top layer of all that, just the indication that the door to our Pandora's box is opening, if we could sit with that boredom and just allow it to be and to breathe with it and to lean into it slightly without becoming overwrought from it or overwhelmed by it, and just allow it to be what it is. Like all emotions, boredom is just going to come and go. It's not going to stay with us for very long. It's not a permanent thing. Nothing in this physical world is permanent. It's always flowing in and flowing out. And boredom is the same way. It will flow in and flow out if we would only sit long enough to realize that. If only we would, be willing to cope with that bit of unease and discomfort that boredom causes within us and sit with it, then we will be taken to another layer of emotions underneath that. Of course, we want to sit with that and sit with that and sit with that. But it all begins with sitting with that boredom. I believe that most of the angst, I think we're living in an epidemic of anxiety and fear and depression amongst our young adults. And one of the things that could be helpful in dealing with that would be teaching and encouraging young adults, or even children at a young age, to prevent this from happening, but teaching them to find comfort in their discomfort, to be able to sit with the uneasiness of boredom and just allow themselves to be bored. I've often said to my kids when they come to me, "Well, I'm so bored, what do I do?" I would just say nothing. Just sit and be bored. Just see what it feels like. Just experience it in your body. Just notice it, observe it. Don't get all hung up in trying to stop it or resist it. Just let it be. It's just boredom. It's just an emotion. Of course, I never thought too much of that answer. Would often shut me out, but I do believe that is the greatest thing we can do for humanity, is for all of us to learn to sit in a room alone with our thoughts and feelings and just allow them to be, because All suffering, all the world's suffering begins with the individual mind. All solution for suffering begins with the individual mind as well. So boredom, though it is uncomfortable, can actually take us to a state of healing. Well, that's my answer. I hope it wasn't too bad. Thank you so much for joining me, and namaste.